We'll hop back over here to the ecom and see where we are. Everything installed. Now, I don't know if it's going to have dependencies on some of these that will stop it from starting or not. So we're going to just see. And I may have another application running on port 3000. Let me go and close that real quick first. There we go. Make sure that we don't have a conflict when we go to run it. So we'll just copy this, put it down here in terminal, and run the application. And then you would control or command click to open that in a browser. And now this is running locally. So we've copied that site down to our computer. We're running it locally. Now we can do the dev work on it to put it up in the cloud the way we want. Now you could continue building out here, but you're going to run into some walls with basically this builds a front end really well, but it has a big set of trouble when you try to connect up a database. It only works with certain things. It's going to have trouble when you're trying to debug your purchase flow, your Stripe integration, things like that. So that's why I just do the front end here, because it does a pretty good job and does it quickly. And then I pull it down locally. You can see that if we build the front end, we're doing basically the same project over here in this dummy repo. It takes quite a bit longer to continue the build over here. It's much more manual process. I'll be interested to see the design it comes up with, whether it's good or bad. But for speed, we go with a tool like this. Right. Let's pop back to our application here and open up the first build. And what I want to do is do a new session and say, please read the first, it uses a hash sign, first build document, and then create a task list for completing the features like this. So we're going to use that task building capability that we're seeing in the other page. And see, it checks for that Kiro directory first to see if we have anything in there, which we don't in this application. We just imported it. We'll let it build that. So we're basically having it build this out so we can go through the tasks. I am okay with it making directories. That's what I approved there, was it could always make directories. That's fine. You can easily undo it. We're in a repo. So if it goes off the rails, we roll backwards real quick. And let's see if we like our requirements file. Seems pretty much similar to what we had in the other one. We'll let it do its design phase. And we'll pop over here and see how the build is going. Okay. When we go to publish this, what's going to happen if I push this up to the cloud right now, it's probably going to fail. And I just want to show you what that looks like here. So you can see a debug publish process as you go along. So you go into Railway and open a GitHub repo. And this is simple ecom. And we are going to, let's copy over to our variables, the database that we have. Okay. So we'll pop back into Kiro and go to our env file here and put that in. So now we have our database URL saved there, and we will deploy this with that variable and see what errors we get on the build. Generally, we need to set up a nixpack. What do they call it? Nixpacks file. Nixpacks file. What do they call it over here? Well, this has a Docker file, so it might build from Docker file. Generally, we would need to set up a Nixpacks file for this to actually deploy properly. We're going to see how it does. Let that deployment run. Here's the build logs. You would copy these logs over to your IDE if they don't build correctly. So it hasn't run into an error here yet. Pretty nice. Older Next.js version. There's the failure. Okay. Encountered an error. All right. So I'll show you how to debug that in a moment here. It's in the middle of a task, so I can't debug it right now. Let's see here. We have the design. It built out here. So again, we're trying to get this to set itself up to work on this application pretty autonomously and get our build completed. We're going to let it do that plan. So what we have over here, while it's writing that document, we have an error. And what we want to see is specifically where that error is coming up. So we could run over here and just try to build it locally with npm run build and get a little more vision into the error that's going to happen. Here we go. So it was not able to generate any static pages due to this thank you page error. These tend to go in priority. So whichever one it runs into first is going to cause it to error out. And once you fix one, there will be others. So you can do this build process locally and get through all the errors before you redeploy. That's basically what you can do. So the task list looks good. We're just going to jump over here and fix these errors for deployment. Please review these build errors. Paste those in. Here it's running through this task list. Take a look at what this builds in. You can view any of the changes it did as it went along. So we're letting it run autonomously here, but you can view everything that it did. Now it's working on this task here. And I haven't counted, but something like Windsurf will do 20 tasks and then stop and you have to tell it continue. I'm curious to see if this runs into the same issue or if it will just complete all tasks that are assigned. Because we gave it through 1.4 to continue here. So we'll see what it ends up doing. Let's take a look. Search params. Okay, so it said it fixed that. We're just going to run the same command again and see what the next error is. Looks like that might have been the only build error. Let's see if we can get that to run in Railway and made task list. We will commit that. Sync those changes up. Now, what Railway does, for those of you who haven't seen it before, is it will auto initialize every time you do a push. So it is listening for changes to the main branch. And anytime you do a push to the main branch, it's going to republish that application. Generally, once you have it deployed and you get into development in depth, you're going to want to go over here to environments and set up a PR environment, and then do your dev on a different branch and do pull requests so that you can pull those in. And it will spin it up in a method that does not affect production. So your production site can stay operational. It's like a staging environment. Click over here and see what our build logs say. So here it was able to generate 11 of 11 static pages and ran into a deploy error. Okay. Let's see if we run into the same error locally. So we have this here. We've done a build and this build was successful. So we're going to try to run it. npm run start. I'm going to try to run it from that. And there's something already running. Did I not close out the previous version? I did not. Go. Okay. So we don't have the same error. It has to do with building it from the Docker file, not specifically from the Next.js build. So we're going to copy that error back in. We want to get this running on deployment before we do a bunch of changes. So let's give it a little bit of context here that it was able to do the build and then ran into this error. Copy this over and give this to Kiro. Okay, so we did a change here. It wasn't a huge change, but new task, new conversation. Right? Pretty much every time. New task, new conversation, paste that in and let that run for a second. I didn't give it a lot of context, but it's like I didn't type an instruction here. I just gave it what the build error and deploy error is, because that should be enough for it to operate on fixing this issue. And if it doesn't, we'll chase it down a little bit more. Okay. Standalone output mode wasn't enabled in Next.js. So we'll comment that and commit it right here and sync those changes up. Awesome. Quentin, glad you like the debug process. This is where this sort of project goes off the rails a lot of times. Is you do the first build and it starts to work, and then you wonder why it doesn't work when you go to put it out on the web. That's why I always do a deployment right after building. I deploy the app and make sure that I have a functional, deployable application before it even has a bunch of features. And then as you build features, you're not going to run into debugging a feature plus debugging deployment. You can just debug the features as they get pushed out. So a little bit of work now to save a bunch of headache later. Awesome. Glad that's helpful, Sierra. I think I did a TikTok video about it last week. The deploy early, deploy often tactic. Just make sure you deploy all the time. And some developers didn't agree with me, but I've seen these projects go offline, go off track so often just because deployment wasn't figured out early on before a bunch of stuff gets built out. That's what I recommend. All right, so we have our tasks set up here. It did all of these initial tasks right here. And just out of curiosity, because again, this tool is brand new, we're just going to go over here and start the next set of tasks and just let it continue through its initial build and set up its entire plan for this application from the beginning. It may take it a little while, but let's let it run through that. And we have this here. Let's see if we have a deployed application. It says we have a deployed application on port 8080. So now what you do is you go over to settings, scroll on down, generate a domain, and this will give you a staging domain. And we said it was on 8080 like that. So we're going to generate and see if it opens up. And now we have our store deployed. So as we start to work on it and build things out, we have a functional deployment environment that we can test on and not build up a bunch of deployment debt that's going to cause us trouble in the future. All pretty straightforward stuff. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, please like and follow. And if you need help building or finishing your app, click the link in my bio to book a one-on-one Zoom call to take a look at your project.